My name is Nikki Needham. I'm 27 years old, and until a few weeks ago, I honestly believed I had a good grasp on what trust was supposed to look like in a relationship. Not the exaggerated movie version, not the dramatic accusations, not the exhausting cycle of checking phones or stalking social media. Just trust. Quiet, simple, maybe a little naive, but real. I had never been the jealous type. If anything, I was the opposite. The go have fun. I'll see you later, girlfriend. The one who didn't interrogate, didn't question, didn't cling. I thought that was a strength. I didn't realize it could also be a blind spot. With Nicholas Callahan, I always leaned into trust. He was steady in his own way, charming without trying, and warm in a way that made people naturally orbit around him. He had that easy confidence people mistake for harmlessness. Whenever he said he was exhausted from work or too drained for date night, I believed him. When he told me he needed a weekend to decompress, I supported him. We had never been the couple who fought over freedom. If anything, I thought we were mature for it. But maturity has a funny way of breaking when secrets enter the room. Everything began on a Monday afternoon, an ordinary, quiet day that should have slipped into memory without making a sound. Nicholas had forgotten his laptop charger in the rush of getting out the door that morning. He texted me in a half-panicked spiral. "Babe, please, I need it. My presentation is in an hour. Can you drop it off?" He could get a little dramatic about work emergencies, and I didn't mind helping. So I swung by his office building during my lunch break. I figured I'd hand it off, maybe grab a coffee with him if he could spare 5 minutes. Nothing unusual. Except that day, everything unusual was waiting for me in the lobby. When I walked through the glass doors, the air conditioning hit me like a wall, and the receptionist nodded politely as I approached the desk. Before I could even finish explaining why I was there, I heard heels clicking rapidly behind me. "Nikki, hey." I turned. It was Danielle, one of Nicholas's coworkers. I'd met her twice before, polite, bubbly, cheerful, in a corporate way. Her smile today was a little too bright, her voice a little too excited, like someone trying to appear neutral while walking across a minefield. She took the charger from my hand with practiced friendliness. "I'll get this up to him. Thanks for bringing it." "No problem," I said. "Is he busy?" "Oh yeah, super busy," she replied too quickly. "Big week after the retreat." "The retreat," I repeated. Danielle froze. It was small, barely a half second, but I saw it. The flicker in her eyes. The way her fingers tightened around the charger. The way her forced smile slipped like someone bumped the edge of a mask. I hadn't known about any retreat. Nicholas had told me he spent the weekend at home decompressing, catching up on laundry and emails. He'd sent photos of his cooking, though now I wondered if they were recycled. He said he needed time to rest because work had been insane. But Danielle looked like someone who just realized she said the wrong thing to the wrong person. "What retreat?" I asked lightly, not accusing, not demanding, just curious. Danielle's throat bobbed as she swallowed. "Oh, the usual team-building thing. Nothing big." I thought Nick mentioned it. "He didn't," I said, still polite. Her smile stretched too wide like a rubber band pulled to breaking point. "Oh, maybe I'm mixing things up. Sorry, I need to run meeting." She practically fled toward the elevator, leaving me standing in the middle of the lobby with a strange, cold pressure blooming behind my ribs. It wasn't anger. It wasn't jealousy. It was a whisper. A tiny voice that asked, "Why didn't he tell you?" And just beneath that, "What else didn't he tell you?" I stayed still for a few seconds, trying to shake off the feeling. Nicholas could have forgotten to mention the retreat. Maybe he thought it was boring. Maybe he didn't want to talk about work over the weekend. Totally normal possibilities existed. But Danielle's reaction wasn't normal. I walked toward the exit, each step feeling heavier than it should. When I stepped outside, the warm afternoon sun did nothing to thaw the coldness creeping through my chest. I got into my car, shut the door, and just sat there staring at the steering wheel. A part of me wanted to march back inside, take the elevator up to his floor, and see what expression Nicholas would make if I casually said, "So how was your retreat?" But I didn't. Confrontation wasn't my style. Instead, I drove to a quiet cafe, ordered an iced tea I barely tasted, and stared at my phone for a long while. My mind kept replaying Danielle's face, the stutter, the panic, the way she bolted. What was she afraid of me knowing? My chest tightened with a kind of ache I hadn't felt in years, like something fragile inside me was beginning to crack. I tried distracting myself. I scrolled through emails, work messages, group chats. Nothing. Then, almost absent-mindedly, I opened Instagram. A harmless thing. A normal thing. But that was the beginning of the storm. The first story was just a photo Nicholas's team standing in front of a lake. He wasn't in that one. I swiped again. More people. Paddleboards, a bonfire, laughter, that kind of carefree joy people post after company outings. Swipe, swipe. And then the video. Music blasting, colored lights flashing, a crowded dance floor, and Nicholas, my Nicholas, in the center, dancing with a woman pressed tightly against him, her hands on his shoulders, his palms gripping her waist, her laughter thrown back into the air, his face inches from her neck. I didn't blink. I didn't breathe. I watched the entire clip. 10 seconds. 10 seconds that rewrote the last 3 years of my life. There are betrayals that explode loudly, shouting matches, broken dishes, accusations. Then there are the quiet ones, the ones that drain all the sound out of your world and replace it with a numb, silent ache. I watched it once, just once. And in that one viewing, something inside me shifted. Something fundamental, something irreversible. I didn't message him. I didn't call. I didn't give him a chance to rewrite the story before I understood the truth. Instead, I got up, walked out of the cafe, and went home to start packing. Not frantically, not emotionally. Calmly, methodically. Like someone performing a task they had rehearsed in a dream. I took only my things, my clothes, my books, my laptop, my art supplies. I left everything we bought together. The furniture, the framed photos, the decorative pillows he claimed made the place feel grown up. I folded the gray hoodie of his I always stole and placed it neatly on the bed. It smelled like him. It wouldn't anymore. By the time the clock hit 6:15 p.m., my car was full. My key was on the counter, and the shared life we built looked untouched except for the absence of me. At 7:18 p.m., right on cue, my phone buzzed. Nicholas, babe, heading home. Want me to pick up dinner? I set the phone face down on the passenger seat and drove away. He had gone home expecting me to be there. Instead, he walked into a life where my toothbrush was gone, my shoes were gone, my clothes vanished from the closet where my absence was louder than any confrontation could ever be. The apartment wasn't empty of things. It was empty of me. And Nicholas, for the first time in a very long time, had no control over what came next. Around noon, while sitting on the edge of the stiff bed, I finally unlocked my phone. I didn't open the messages immediately. I just scrolled through the previews the way someone might watch a storm build from a distance. The tone shifted with every block of text. The first ones were casual. Babe, did you go somewhere? Then confusion, Nikki. Why is your stuff gone? Then concern. Are you okay? Where are you? Followed quickly by irritation. Why are you ignoring me? This isn't funny. And then the beginning of desperation. Please call me. Please. His escalating panic was a map of exactly how much control he thought he had over me. I didn't respond. Not because I was trying to punish him, but because I genuinely had nothing to say. Silence wasn't a tactic. It was the only truth I had left. By late afternoon, I left the hotel and drove to a quiet lake about 20 minutes away. It was a place we used to visit early in our relationship, a spot where the world seemed softer, more forgiving. I wasn't trying to relive memories. I think I was trying to reclaim the parts of myself I had given away too easily. The water was still reflecting a cloudy sky that felt appropriately heavy. I sat on a bench, watching the ripples spread from a single duck gliding across the surface. That's when my phone buzzed again, this time only once. A video call. Nicholas. I stared at the screen, watching it vibrate in my palm like something alive. I didn't touch it, just let it ring. When the call ended, a text followed instantly. I don't understand what's happening. Please just talk to me. A moment later, if this is about the weekend, you need to calm down. It wasn't a big deal. There it was. The beginning of minimization. The first crack in his version of the truth. I took a slow breath, leaning back against the bench. My heartbeat stayed steady. My palms didn't shake. There was no impulse to scream or defend or demand an explanation. I was past that. Because I had seen the way he looked at that woman. The way he held her. The way he smiled. That wasn't nothing. That wasn't just dancing. It was intimacy. It was energy. It was betrayal disguised under neon lights and alcohol. Another text came in, this time longer. The preview showing enough for me to know his panic had deepened. I didn't open it. I couldn't. If I let his words into my mind, I knew he would try to bend them until they snapped into a shape that suited him. There is a moment in every heartbreak where the emotional bond breaks, not gradually, not softly, but in one decisive snap. That moment had already happened for me. Watching the video didn't just hurt, it rewired something. The version of Nicholas I had loved, trusted, defended. She evaporated. What remained was the man in that frame, his hands on someone else's waist. And that man didn't get access to my pain. When evening settled over the lake, I checked into a different hotel, one closer to downtown, but still out of his immediate orbit. The room was nicer than the previous one, with warm lighting and a view of the city through floor-to-ceiling windows. I placed my bags down, sat on the edge of the bed, and let the quiet sink in. My phone buzzed again, this time from an unknown number. Danielle. Her preview read, "Nikki, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean..." I deleted the notification without opening the message. Guilt wasn't my responsibility. It never had been. As the city lights flickered on outside the window, I finally plugged in my phone and set it face down on the nightstand. I showered, changed into a soft, oversized shirt, and crawled under the blankets. The sheets were cool against my skin, and for a moment the entire world felt distant. The betrayal, the shock, the numbness. Then, sometime around midnight, my phone buzzed again, longer this time. A voicemail. I didn't listen to it. Not because I was avoiding truth, but because I already had the truth. Silence is often portrayed as weakness in relationships, but that night, my silence wasn't weakness. It was protection. It was clarity. It was the only thing between me and the version of me who might have forgiven him too easily. As I drifted into a light, restless sleep, I felt something unexpected. Not relief, not peace, but distance. A distance growing wider by the hour between the woman I had been in that apartment and the woman I was becoming in this unfamiliar hotel bed. And for the first time in a very long time, that distance felt like freedom. When I woke the next morning, pale sunlight slipped through the curtains of the hotel room, casting long, soft stripes across the sheets. For a moment, I forgot where I was. I blinked at the unfamiliar ceiling, the muted beige walls, the elegant floor lamp I hadn't turned on the night before. Then everything rushed back: Danielle's slip, the retreat, the video, the packing, the silence. Betrayal has a way of following you into the daylight. It doesn't dissolve with sleep. It waits patiently on the other side of your dreams. My phone sat on the nightstand screen, dimmed, battery fully charged. I stared at it for a long while, knowing what waited inside. I didn't reach for it. Instead, I stretched out my legs beneath the blanket and exhaled. The air felt different, heavy, yet somehow clearer. Eventually, I picked it up. The notifications were endless missed calls, voicemails, text messages on every platform he could think of. Nicholas was unraveling in real time. The first stage had been confusion. The second had been irritation. The third, which I woke up to, was panic. He had realized I wasn't just taking space. I was gone. I opened one message, not to engage, but to understand the timeline of his meltdown. It was more frantic than I expected. "Nikki, please, just tell me you're okay. Why did you leave? What's going on? If this is about the weekend, you're misunderstanding everything. Please call me. Where are you?" Then came a wall of voice messages varying in tone, some shaky, some angry, some soft and pleading. I didn't play them. I didn't need his voice inside my head. I scrolled further. The shift came quickly. "I don't deserve this. You're overreacting." It was one dance. "Are you seriously blowing up our relationship over nothing?" There it was. Stage 4. Minimization. I placed the phone down and stared out the window at the slow morning traffic. The city was alive, indifferent, unaware of the chaos unraveling only a few streets away. Betrayal is oddly isolating like that. Your world crumbles silently while the rest of the world keeps moving with its usual rhythm. I made myself coffee from the little machine in the corner. The bitter scent grounded me. When I sat back on the bed, my phone buzzed again. This time from a different number. Unknown. "Hey, Nikki, it's Kayla. I'm one of Nick's coworkers. He's freaking out. He said you left. Can you please talk to him? He's a mess." I stared at the message longer than I wanted to. There was no malice in it, no manipulation, just confusion and an attempt to help someone who appeared heartbroken. But that didn't change the truth. He wasn't heartbroken. He was losing control. I didn't reply. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed again, this time a voicemail transcription from Nicholas. I didn't listen, but the preview alone was enough to paint the entire picture. "Nikki, please. I don't know what you think you saw, but I swear it's not what it looks like. We were all drunk. She grabbed me. I didn't just please call me. Excuses. Already shifting into blame. Already shaping the story to survive the consequences. I put my phone on Do Not Disturb. It didn't last long. By noon, the hotel room phone rang. I nearly laughed. Nicholas must have called the front desk and begged for them to connect him. I didn't answer. I didn't owe him access to me simply because he demanded it. I took my bag and left the hotel, walking down the street to a small cafe tucked between a bookstore and an old tailor shop. I ordered a cappuccino and sat in the far corner, tucked away behind a tall plant invisible to the world. For the first time in days, I let myself breathe. My peace lasted 5 minutes. My phone buzzed again, this time a message that wasn't frantic or pleading. It was calculated. Cold. Nikki, you're acting childish. Running away solves nothing. I stared at the screen. There it was. Stage 5. Disrespect. When a manipulator realizes desperation doesn't work, they switch to insult. If they can't pull you back with love, they'll try with shame. I didn't feel shame. I felt confirmation. I locked my phone without replying and took a sip of my drink. The warm foam touched my lips, but I barely tasted it. I was too busy tracing patterns in the behavior I'd been too blind to see before. Nicholas had always been good with words. Charming. Clever. He knew how to say the right thing at the right moment. He knew how to make you feel guilty just enough to apologize even when you weren't wrong. He'd done it subtly, swimming beneath the surface of our relationship like a quiet undercurrent. But betrayal throws everything into sharp relief. Patterns become visible. Truth becomes undeniable. I spent the afternoon walking around the city, stopping by a park bench, sitting by the river, wandering aimlessly until my feet ached. It wasn't the city I was exploring. It was myself. The part of me that had been asleep. The part that had been silenced. The part that finally understood that love shouldn't feel like doubt or confusion or excuse-making. When I returned to the hotel, a fresh wave of messages waited for me. And then a new one, this time from his sister Emily. Nikki, I don't know what happened, but Nicholas is devastated. Please talk to him. He won't stop pacing around. We're all worried. I leaned back against the headboard and closed my eyes. Emily meant well. She always had. But she didn't know what her brother was capable of hiding. His desperation wasn't about losing me. It was about losing control. Another message came in seconds later, this time from Nicholas again. The desperation sharpened into panic. Nikki, please, I'm begging you. Just talk to me. I love you. I'm losing my mind. Please don't do this. I let the words sit on the lock screen. I didn't respond. Not because I wanted him to suffer. Not because I wanted revenge. But because silence had finally given me space to hear myself. To recognize my own value. To realize I didn't need his explanations to validate what I'd seen with my own eyes. A few hours later, the messages slowed, then stopped. Not because he gave up, but because he was regrouping, thinking, recalibrating, planning his next move. People like Nicholas don't disappear. They strategize. And I knew then he would come for answers. He would come for closure. He would come for control. I just didn't know how soon. By the next morning, Nicholas's desperation had begun to mutate into something sharper, something more frantic and unpredictable. Silence didn't just unsettle him, it unmoored him. And the longer I stayed quiet, the more he clawed at explanations that made him the victim instead of the architect of his own downfall. When I opened my phone, the first thing I saw wasn't a message from him. It was from his ex-girlfriend Olivia, a woman I had never spoken to, but had seen pop up occasionally in old comments on his photos or tagged posts from years ago, the kind of past presence someone never fully deletes. Her message was simple. Hey, I don't know what's going on, but Nicholas is spiraling. If you need to talk, I'm here. I stared at the name for a long moment. Olivia. Of course she would appear now. Some people slip out of an ex's life gracefully. Olivia was not one of them. Her presence hovered at the edges, always ready to reinsert herself when cracks formed. But not this time. I deleted the message without responding. Because this wasn't about her. This wasn't even about Nicholas anymore. It was about me. I left the hotel for fresh air and walked along the quiet morning streets past bakeries opening their doors and a florist arranging sunflowers in metal buckets. The world felt normal in a soft, cruel way. Strangers laughed, dogs pulled their leashes, someone jogged past while talking loudly into earbuds. Life didn't pause for heartbreak. My phone buzzed again, this time with a message preview from an unfamiliar number. Nicholas's mother. Of course. Hi, sweetheart. Nicholas is very upset. I'm sure it's all a misunderstanding. Please call him back. You two need to talk this out like adults. Translation, fix it so he stops bothering us. I kept walking. The breeze slid across my cheeks, cool and steady, grounding me more than any conversation could, When I reached a bench near the corner of the park, I sat down and stared at the fountain in the center water, rising, falling, rising again, just like it had every day for decades. It made me wonder how people keep living through their losses. Not because time heals everything, but because life simply refuses to stop for anyone. My phone buzzed once more. Another message from his mother. Relationships require forgiveness, Nikki. Another translation. Your pain is inconvenient. Please make it stop. I set the phone beside me and let the words dissolve into the hum of traffic. Forgiveness isn't something you can demand like a favor. Forgiveness isn't owed, especially not when the betrayal is still warm. A soft ping pulled my attention again. This time, a message from Danielle, the coworker whose slip had ignited all of this. Nikki? I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to cause trouble. I really thought he'd told you about the retreat. She rambled on in 2 more paragraphs, apologizing, explaining, insisting she hadn't meant to create drama. I believe that part, but her message only clarified one thing: Nicholas had lied to everyone, not just me. He'd said we were solid. He'd painted our relationship as picture perfect. He'd pretended everything was fine while he was busy leading a second life behind my back. I didn't respond, because I didn't need anything from her. Midday sunlight poured over the pavement as I wandered back to the hotel, stopping at a convenience store to buy a bottle of iced tea. Even the mundane felt surreal now. Betrayal does that, it distorts reality until the smallest tasks feel like echoes in a dream. When I got back to my room, the voicemail icon glowed bright red. 9 new messages. I didn't open a single one. Instead, I set my phone down on the dresser and let silence take up the space it deserved. Hours passed. I took a shower, letting the hot water wash over my skin until the steam blurred my reflection. I changed into fresh clothes and stretched out on the bed, flipping through channels without really watching anything. It wasn't until late evening that the next shift arrived. A new message from Nicholas. This one longer than the rest. Crafted, measured, carefully restrained. The calm before the storm. I read the preview. If you're going to throw everything away over one dance, then I don't know what kind of person I've been with this whole time. There it was. The victim narrative. If he could paint me as unreasonable, his guilt felt smaller. I exhaled slowly. I didn't open it. Instead, I sat on the edge of the bed and let the quiet steady me. Silence wasn't just a tool anymore. It was clarity. It was my boundary. It was the distance I needed to stand outside the story he was desperately trying to write for me. As night settled over the city, I dimmed the lights and drew the curtains closed. My phone was still buzzing, occasionally slower now, more spaced out, signaling that Nicholas was running out of strategies. Manipulation, guilt, minimization, aggression, desperation, victimhood. He had already played every card, and none of them worked. When I finally crawled under the covers, exhaustion wrapped itself around me, not from sadness, but from the quiet strength it took to reclaim my peace. Because silence wasn't passive. Silence was active, deliberate, powerful, and Nicholas was finally learning the one truth he never expected. My silence was louder than his panic. By the 5th morning, the messages slowed to a trickle. Not because Nicholas had calmed down. Men like him don't calm down when they lose control. They strategize. They shift angles. They study the silence like an opponent they can't predict. The gap between his texts wasn't peace. It was calculation. And I felt it. That morning, I left the hotel early and went to the coffee shop near my old office. I had avoided familiar places for days, but exhaustion pushed me toward routine. I wanted something normal, a latte, the smell of warm pastry, the hum of people who didn't know my life was split into before and after a 10-second video. I ordered my drink, found a seat by the window, and watched the city wake. Then I felt it. A shift in the air, a tightening in my chest. Almost like my body sensed him before my eyes did. Across the street, leaning against a silver sedan, stood Nicholas Callahan. His posture was rigid, arms folded, his foot tapping like his nerves were electrified. His eyes were scanning, searching for me. His hair was uncombed, his clothes rumpled like sleep had abandoned him days ago. He looked undone. He had found me. I didn't move, didn't touch my drink. I simply watched him from behind the glass, hidden by the angle my heart beat steady. There was a time I would have rushed to him if he looked like that. A time when his distress would have pierced me instantly. But that version of me was gone. When he finally turned his head enough to recognize me through the window, his entire body jolted. He pushed off the car and crossed the street so fast he nearly stepped into traffic. I stayed seated. He burst through the coffee shop door, breath unsteady, eyes wild with a mix of relief and panic. When he saw me sitting calmly, he froze for a second like he expected anger or tears or something theatrical he could work with. Instead, he got stillness. "Nikki," his voice cracked on the second syllable. "Jesus, where have you been?" I took a slow sip of my latte. Walking. His face tightened. That wasn't the answer he wanted. He wanted drama. He wanted chaos. Something he could shape into an argument. I didn't give him any. He slid into the seat across from me, leaning forward, palms pressed onto the table as if he could anchor himself into my silence. "You can't just disappear. You scared me. I thought something happened to you." I looked at him. Something did happen. He flinched. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't soften it. I said it the way you state the weather. Neutral, factual, unavoidable. He sucked in a shaky breath. "If this is about the party, the retreat," I corrected. He froze again. His eyes darted away. There, the truth he didn't want to look at. I reached into my purse, pulled out my phone, and tapped the screen. The video played silently 10 seconds of neon lights music he could imagine, and Nicholas with his hands on another woman. I set the phone on the table facing him. He couldn't look away. His chest rose and fell too fast. He ran a hand through his hair, swallowed hard, and immediately said the line that confirmed everything about who he really was. "That's not your taking it out of context." My jaw clenched, just a little, not from hurt, but from clarity. "Context?" I asked. He leaned forward, desperate. "We were all drunk. It was stupid. It didn't mean anything." She grabbed me. "Nikki, you know I'd never—" "You lied about the retreat." He shut up. "You lied about where you were." I continued, my voice even controlled. "You lied about who you were with. You lied the whole weekend. And the only reason I found out was because someone else slipped." "Nikki, please. I didn't tell you because I didn't want you to get the wrong idea." "The wrong idea," I echoed. "You mean the true idea?" He winced like I physically hit him. His voice shook. "I love you." "No, you don't." He blinked rapidly, stunned. "If you loved me," I said quietly, "you wouldn't have hidden the truth. You wouldn't have danced with someone like that. You wouldn't have let me believe I mattered while acting like I didn't." He swallowed, eyes glassy. "I made a mistake." "You made a choice." His breath hitched again, short, choppy, almost childlike. He reached across the table as if he could close the emotional distance by closing the physical one. I pulled my hands back into my lap. The rejection made his face crumble. "Nikki, please, just come home. We can fix this. I'll do better, I swear. I can change." I shook my head slowly. "You don't miss me," I said. "You miss the version of me that tolerated you." His mouth fell open. I held his gaze steady and unflinching. "And that version of me doesn't exist anymore." Something inside him broke. Then, not loudly, but visibly. His shoulders sagged. His jaw trembled. His eyes darted desperately across my face, searching for softness he could grab onto. There wasn't any. Silence stretched between us, heavy and final. "Nikki," he whispered, voice cracking. "Don't do this." I stood up. He rose too quickly, knocking his knee against the table. "Wait, Nikki, wait!" I looked at him one last time. "You don't have access to me anymore." His breath caught like someone cut a wire inside him. I stepped around him. My movements calm, unhurried, untouched by his unraveling. The cafe door chimed softly as I pushed it open, sunlight washing over me like a quiet blessing. I didn't look back, because there was nothing behind me worth turning toward. The sunlight outside the cafe felt different after that conversation, warmer, sharper, almost painfully honest. Maybe it was just the contrast between the quiet, measured strength I carried inside and the fractured panic I'd left behind. Or maybe it was because walking away from someone you once loved forces the world to look new again, like stepping out of a darkened theater into blinding daylight. I didn't rush. I didn't tremble. I didn't look over my shoulder to see whether Nicholas was watching through the cafe window. I already knew he was. I could feel the weight of his shock, his disbelief, the quiet collapse of a man who'd finally hit a wall he couldn't talk charm or guilt his way through. But that wasn't my responsibility anymore. I walked down the sidewalk, the city bustling around me, cars honking, people chatting, a cyclist weaving through traffic, a kid laughing as he ran past with a melting ice cream cone. Life moved as if nothing significant had happened. That's the strange thing about heartbreak. It doesn't echo across the world the way it echoes inside you. It stays contained, private, invisible to the strangers brushing past you. I didn't go back to the hotel. I didn't need a hiding place anymore. Instead, I wandered along the river, hands in my pockets, the late afternoon breeze lifting my hair as boats drifted quietly along the water. There was peace there, but not the gentle kind. More like silence after an explosion. The air still held the faint burn of what had just happened, but it was clearing slowly. I realized something then, something both simple and devastating. Nicholas hadn't just broken my trust. He had broken the version of me that believed trust was unconditional. I had always thought of myself as someone strong in soft ways, patient, understanding, forgiving. I loved with an open hand, never a closed fist. But with Nicholas, that softness had turned into something he exploited. My trust became his safety net. My empathy became his shield. My silence became the place where he hid his choices. Not anymore. I reached a bench by the water and sat down, letting my body relax into the cool metal. Across the river, the lights of the city began to flicker on windows, glowing one by one as dusk crept in. The scene was quiet, almost cinematic, the kind of moment where a narrator would ask the big question, "What now?" But I didn't ask it. For the first time in days, I didn't need answers. I didn't need a plan. I didn't need closure from Nicholas. Walking away was the closure. A soft vibration in my pocket pulled me from my thoughts. My phone. I considered ignoring it, but curiosity won out. It wasn't Nicholas this time. It was Emily, his sister, Nikki. I heard what happened. He told Mom you left him without saying anything. I knew that wasn't the whole story. I'm not taking sides, but I hope you're okay. I stared at her message, absorbing each word slowly. There was kindness there, honesty, a gentle acknowledgement of truth. But the important thing was this. I didn't feel the need to explain myself. For once, I didn't feel responsible for managing anyone else's narrative. Not his family's, not the woman in the video, not the coworkers apologizing for their part in it. My story didn't belong to them. It belonged to me. I typed a short reply to Emily. "I'm okay. Thank you." And left it at that. As evening deepened, I walked farther along the path, the river turning dark and glassy beside me. The weight that had lived in my chest for days began to ease, loosening rib by rib. Hurt was still there, yes. Betrayal leaves bruises even when you walk away cleanly, but something brighter began taking up space beside it. Freedom. Not the reckless kind, not the lonely kind, but the kind that feels like a door finally opening after years of being stuck. I didn't need to erase the good memories with Nicholas. I didn't need to deny that I loved him once. Love doesn't disappear just because the person who held it failed to honor it. Love changes shape. Love redirects. Love returns to the person who gave it. The wind carried the smell of rain, fresh, earthy cleansing. I tilted my head up, closing my eyes for a moment as tiny droplets began to fall. Not a storm, just a light drizzle, soft, forgiving. My phone buzzed again, and I opened my eyes. Nicholas. One last message. Short, desperate, raw. "Please say something." I read it once, then turned off my phone. Not out of anger, not out of spite, but because I didn't need to say anything. The truth had already been spoken hours earlier. He no longer had access to me. And that wasn't a punishment. It was liberation. I slipped the phone into my pocket, stood from the bench, and began walking again toward the bridge, toward the lights, toward a life that didn't require me to shrink myself to make someone else comfortable. The rain fell a little harder. The pavement shimmered. My heart, for the first time in a long time, felt like it was beating at its own rhythm. I didn't know what tomorrow would look like. I didn't need to. Because tonight, in the glow of street lamps and rain and newfound clarity, I had finally